I'm Nathan Ponchard, this is Chasing Cars, and this is the Skoda Kodiaq RS, as it says on the number plate. Now, how can you tell that this is the new flagship for the Czech brand's 7-seat SUV? That would be via its gloss black front grille, its new front bumper bar. It has full LED headlights with adaptive lighting, like that Matrix LED thing that Audis do. It has 20-inch wheels like the lesser sport line, but in a funkier design. It has red brake calipers. It has a color-coded insert above the side skirt. And at the back, it has this very 80s red reflective strip that runs across the back. Plus, it has twin exhaust pipes. Now, I suppose the thing about having all that red on it says that it probably is quick, and given what's under the bonnet, it actually is. Now, much like the outside, not a whole lot has changed with the Skoda Kodiaq RS, but the things that have been altered matter. Starting with the steering wheel in front of me, which is a flat bottom like the normal one, but it's thicker with red stitching and a nicer to hold rim, and it is attached to a new steering rack that only has 2.1 turns lock to lock and is variable in its ratio, unlike the standard car that has 2.7 and needs a lot more wheel to turn in. Now, around me here, we do have things like the hard plastic door grabs here, but at least it has door grabs. And so, yeah, it isn't quite to the same level of tactility as a Volkswagen, but all the things that Skoda has added to this RS are really nice, like this sort of fake plastic carbon fiber insert here that feels smooth but looks like carbon fiber. It gets its own virtual cockpit instrument layout here. It gets this sport information thing here. I'm sitting on these cool tombstone style Alcantara and leather buckets with, again, this carbon fiber look leather, much like a Golf R. And that's probably about it. Other than that, everything else in this car is standard. Now, one thing this Skoda Kodiaq RS also has is launch control, and that's for its 2-litre twin-turbo diesel that's sitting up front, although more about that in a minute. Now, what we do here is we start it up, we put it into drive, and then pulse the mode into sport. We make sure that the traction control is turned off in ASR off, and we make sure it is in sport mode for the ultimate in drive and sound. Hold the brake with your left foot, flatten it with the right. It ramps up to 3,500 revs, and then let it go. Not the most seamless start in the world, but it's not slow. Like Skoda claims 7 seconds 0 to 100, which is 1.2 quicker than the standard petrol. But the drivability in this car is so much better than the normal car. It has the muscle that the regular 2-litre turbo petrol just doesn't have. 176 kilowatts at 4,000 RPM compared to only 132, and 500 Newton meters from 1750 to 2500 revs instead of 320. And that's enough to give this car the muscle that it needs. Now, the Kodiaq RS also has unique suspension, including the quick ratio steering like I mentioned before, retuned dampers with adaptive damping, it has larger rear brake discs. It just has this connection to the road, like it's driving on 235 20-inch Continental Conti Sport Contact 5s, and they're a great tyre on their own. And yet, when you're driving around here, you don't feel like it's constantly relying on the tyre grip to make it handle. It actually is quite chuckable, this car. We've been fanging it around London Raceway today in New Zealand spec cars. The Australian cars are not on the ground yet, so we can't drive it out on the road. But first impressions of the Kodiaq RS are that you could actually turn up to a drive day at London or at Wakefield Park or something like that and come away having quietly impressed everybody that's watching the mum bus that you're driving do a pretty bloody good job of stringing corners together and having some decent pace. Now, I was kind of concerned that coming here that I thought the Skoda might be just doing it at London Raceway because it was easy, and that there might be a little bit of understeering mess happening with the car, but it's not like that at all. It's actually really good. Like, we're going into a hairpin here, and I've only got to turn the wheel to there to go in. It also has this dynamic sound thing at the back. I don't know whether you can hear it. We're in drive at the moment, and it kind of runs all the time, but if you put it in sport mode and then have the gearbox in sport as well, it plumbs the sound through the speakers and actually makes the sound from out of the back of the car. You can hear it from the left rear exhaust. It's all artificial, but I don't know, it's a bit nicer than having a diesel grumble. If everyone can remember back to, you know, the Golf GTD days, it had a sound actuator in it and it was kind of nice. And yeah, there's just something not hateful about it. I think in combination though of the rest of the car, and that is, we're talking about, you know, a Volkswagen Group 7-seat SUV here that does a really impressive job of squeezing 7 comfortable seats into a fairly compact body that looks quietly handsome, that performs really well, that is really nicely equipped, that has a really good stereo and really excellent seats. I don't know, I'm shocked that I like this car as much as I do. Skoda expects the RS to only make up about 20% of Kodiaq sales, although that is completely volume limited. It won't reach full production until Q1 or Q2 in 2020 for Australia, and by then there is every chance that the RS might end up being 50% of full volume like the RS in an Octavia was back in its heyday. Now, just one little aside about the Kodiaq RS is that it currently holds the lap record for 7-seaters at the Nürburgring. And for any family buyer in the market for a 7-seat SUV wagon like this, that is really important. The thing about the Kodiaq is it's always sat in a bit of a niche on its own. It's neither as big as a Mazda CX-9 7-seater, but it is far more usable and practical than the Nissan X-Trail and Honda CR-V 7-seaters that are essentially 5+2s. And then you add the RS treatment to that, and that leaves this flagship Skoda Kodiaq completely in a category of its own. Now, according to Skoda, compared to other cars of its type, it offers $12,000 better value than a Ford Everest Titanium with the same amount of equipment, although who would want to have that anyway? It offers $15,000 better value than a Land Rover Discovery Sport with an equivalent amount of equipment, and it offers $30,000 better value than a Volvo XC90 D5 or a Jaguar F-Pace 20D, both of which are slower than this car, larger than this car, and $30,000 more expensive than this car. Like, honestly, in terms of a thing that sits between categories, that manages to be egalitarian and something a little bit left-wing and cool about it, if I was 14 years old and I had to live in a family where someone had to buy a 7-seat SUV, I'd kind of hope that my dad would buy one of these and then actually drive the way it wants to be driven, because this thing is bloody good.